Hi, and welcome back to Hot Off the Press, the show about new releases and the authors that bring them to you. I'm your host, Jim Nettles, and tonight we've got a bunch of fabulous authors with a whole lot of fun to stack up that to-be-read pile, especially for everybody who has those brand new Kindles. So before we dive in too far, let's see who is coming in to stack them up tonight. So Kiki, you are up first.
Hi, I am Kiki Burrelli, and I'm a gay paranormal romance author, and I'll be here to talk about my last releases in December, Thrust and Rosy Red Cheeks.
BL?
Hi, I'm BL Maxwell. I write contemporary and paranormal romance, and I'm here to talk about my latest release, which is Haunting Destiny and Paranormal. That's it.
Susan?
Hi, I'm Susan Scott Shelley. I write contemporary romance where love is love and happily ever afters are guaranteed. And I'm here tonight to talk about my latest release, which is Seduce.
And Becke.
Hello, I'm Becke Turner. I write sweet romance, contemporary romance, and I'm here to talk about my 7th in my Clock Tower series, and it's Sunbury Christmas.
So as love is in the air tonight, let's find out a little bit about kind of the setups everybody's going to be walking into. So Kiki, as we take a look at the books, what kind of world are we going to be walking into?
So with Thrust, it's the 4th book in this series, so it's the last book too. So we've spent a bunch of time in this world where it's like our world, only there are werewolves and witches that the humans don't know about. I mean, some do, but most of them don't. But in my world, there was also 2 additional species of werewolves that just sort of walked through a portal one day and arrived, and they can't get back to where they come from. And so, as everybody I'm sure knows, werewolves are very territorial. And so this series starts 50 years after that had occurred, and just sort of this town called Crescent City that evolved around this situation where they try to keep the other werewolves contained, but also try to sort of learn to live together, because that's never been a thing that like werewolves, the different packs on Earth and witches have been able to do. So there's like a bunch of political intrigue, but then there's also romance. The whole series is arranged marriages, arranged matings in some sense of the word. And then, there's all other exciting, adventurous things happening that I could just talk about for a million years, but I won't. But so that's the Thrust series of Lunar Wolves. And then Rosy Red Cheeks is just it's a passion project. It's in my Welcome to Morningwood series, which is centered around this small town of like all different kinds of shifters. And it's just they're all sweet and low angst and just very fluffy and fun.
BL, what world are we going to step into with you this week?
So this is the 7th in the Valley Ghost series, and all of these books center around this one couple, Jason and Wade, who they end up being paranormal researchers. So through the 7 books, they now have a team. They have other people that help them, and then they've also gotten other teams that help them out when they need, if it's not really ghosts that they're dealing with, if it's more demonic, they have other teams that are more specialized in that. So they've kind of branched out from just ghosts. So in Haunting Destiny, they get invited to a Christmas party, but when they get there, it's set up like a murder mystery type story. So what happens is the people that are actual psychics and people who can see spirits are really kind of they know what's going on. They know that there really is something paranormal going on there, where the fake ghost hunters are kind of like, oh, this is a lot of fun. They're really, it's kind of, it's different for both of their experiences, because the people that are really ghost hunters know something more is there that they need to find out what's going on. And the fake people are just kind of doing their own thing, thinking it's a great party. So it's kind of goes from this party to where the 2 main characters finally get their happy, their big happy ending, which they have not gotten through seven books. So they finally get that. And then this will actually be sort of a transition book where the whole series has taken place around Sacramento, and it's based on stories of real hauntings in the area and different buildings that are supposed to be haunted. And so this will transition them to where they can now go to another state, like Nevada City, or not Nevada City, Virginia City, go to some different hauntings rather than just in this area. So, but it was a lot of fun. It's all of it's ghost stories. The whole series is ghost stories.
Susan, how about you?
So my book is book 2 in the Love and Rugby Season of Love series, which is a spin-off of the Love and Rugby series I write with Chantal Maire. It's set in Philly and it revolves around a rec league rugby team. So the Season of Love series takes place during the same season of holidays. So there's overlapping timelines for the 3 books in the series. So this one has a very light touch of Halloween in it and leads us up to Christmas. So it's not really a Christmas book, but Christmas happens in it. We've got 2 very stubborn heroes. There's a bit of an age gap between them. We've got the older guy who fears holding him back from pursuing a relationship with someone younger because of what he went through dating somebody older when he was that age. Meanwhile, the younger guy's like, I know what I want, I'm going after it. He's very driven, but he also has a hard time keeping his attention in one spot. So he's an app developer and a traveler and a photographer, and his attention is pulled in so many directions. And he's never really felt understood or like he really belongs in a place. And in Philadelphia, he's found this rec league rugby team that kind of accepts him for who he is, and this guy that really seems to get him. So in this book, there's struggle with having work-life balance, with self-acceptance, and finding somebody who really sees and understands you, and holding on in spite of stubborn people that, by the end of this book, Chantal and I just wanted to bop these guys' heads together because they were just being very difficult. But it was a lot of fun. And we always love pulling our original Love and Rugby guys into these stories because we have so much fun with these characters that it's really fun being in their worlds, which is basically our world, because we'll have like restaurants we've been to in Philly, like we go to the Magic Gardens with them. So I like setting things where I can walk around and say, oh yeah, our guys went to this park, our guys went to this restaurant. So they go to the tree lighting at City Hall, that kind of thing. So it's fun for me to put things where I live, and writing with Chantal's just been a blast. So we're having a really good time with these guys.
Becke, what world are we going to fall into?
I write small town, and in this particular one, it's the 7th in the Sunbury Christmas. It's 7th of the Clock Tower romance, and they're all set in this fictitious small town of Sunbury, North Carolina, which actually was modeled after Newberry, South Carolina, which is near where I live. But at any rate, in this particular setup, I used an older couple, a more mature couple, and I brought them, I brought in the characters that you've already met in the books 1 through 6. One of them is the Murphy family. Those are involved there. But this is, the setup is a grandmother that is suddenly faced with raising her grandson. And I have a lot of friends that I know that this has happened to. And so I wanted to go into dysfunctional families and the healing part of love. There's a miniature horse in this, and it goes through the healing of animals, with animals and grieving. But it is a very lighthearted story. We have a fence stringing party and a Christmas parade.
So, PL, let's dive a little bit deeper. Who are we going to be hanging out with in this one? Who we're going to be meeting again? And are there some new folks we get to hang out with this time?
Well, the book before this I released was called The Things We Find, and it's actually a group of urban explorers. And they end up, that book kind of takes off to cursed objects. And at first, these people don't know what this is. It's this all, they really have no clue. They're not paranormal explorers or anything. So they're there, But the Wade and Jason they're pretty arrogant because they know a lot about ghosts. So, anyone else, they're like, these guys don't know what they're doing kind of thing. So those guys are there, but they do realize that there is something with these guys. They do have some kind of powers. It also, there's a psychic that she helps a lot of the people in the area. And she doesn't normally go to things like that just because it's so overwhelming being around so many people and so many spirits. She just can't function that way. So she's there. So they're all kind of like, what's going to happen if she, why is she here, basically? So most of them, there's a couple of teams that they do see that are paranormal explorers, like I said, that have gone with them and have helped them. But mostly the other team that they meet with are the urban explorers. And so they find it kind of fascinating that one of the guys that's in that group can absorb a spirit and then it leaves a mark on him, like a tattoo, but it's not a visible tattoo. It only shows if he's exposed to a spirit. So they're really fascinated. They're like little kids where anything new that's paranormal, they're like, oh, tell us about this. But for the most part, they don't believe a lot of what they hear.
So, Susan, who are we going to be hanging out with in this book?
So we primarily hang out with Rocco. He's a chef. He owns his own restaurant. This is his second attempt at that. His first one didn't work out well, so he carries a lot of weight on his shoulders to make sure this second restaurant is a big success. So he basically eats, sleeps, breathes, lives for this restaurant. And then we also meet Wyatt. Wyatt is my world traveler, app developing photographer who is jumping all around, has lived in tons of places, isn't usually, basically his apartment in Philly is like his base for holding like his bed and his camera and stuff, just in between his adventures. So there, and then we see the rugby guys. We have a touch of rugby in this, like not much. For non-sports people, it's just like a scene and a half. It's not like crazy, and it's more like rugby-ish. Like we're not very, very specific. So, but yeah, it's a lot of them interacting with their friends. So we'll see a lot of the guys from the previous series, because these guys are mentioned in those books as like, secondary characters. So now we get to see why these guys are the way they are. Or in book 2 in the first series, our one hero worked for this like grocery delivery app. Turns out Wyatt made that app, and Wyatt also is part owner of the nightclub they go to, and like all of these, he has his hands in so many things, and half the guys didn't know. So it was funny to have that reveal come out. It's one of my favorite scenes in the book, when it's like, and I'm not really spoiling it, that's fine to say that, just that he's doing all of these things, and he's still relatively like pretty young for doing all of that. But there's a lot of food, and we like to say this book, it's food as a love language and tech support as a love language, which to me tickles me, because like if something goes wrong, I don't really know how to fix things. And I would love to have somebody be like, okay, I think I broke this. I spilled coffee. Please fix it for me. So that would be ideal. So
Becke, who do we get to meet and spend time with in this one?
I think one of my favorite characters is Pam, who is the person that loses her husband and her son-in-law, so that's why she's raising the child. And the biggest thing that I like about her is that she'll do anything for love, and she goes to any lengths for this child to help this little boy heal, and her grandson. And then the interesting thing is the little boy wants a miniature horse, and she is afraid of horses. And so she has to overcome this. And then the hero actually is a horse trainer that helps her. And you bring in the thing, like I said before, we have the fence stringing. All these things are to prepare her place for this new hobby hobby, if you will, that she's going to have because she's doing this for the grandson. And the little miniature horse is what's healing the child. And so I think that's a fun part. The other part that I liked is that when I brought in the other characters are younger, and so that you have more of a multi-generational. And so suddenly here is a woman in her 50s that is a mother with the rest of the Sunbury people that you've learned, that you've met in the other series, and they are younger. And so they go together because she needs babysitting services. She needs, help with this child that she's moved into this new town, and they have children. So that to me was a lot of fun to have women helping women raise this child.
Kiki, how about you? So who we're going to meet first all in the Thrust universe?
The Thrust universe, we'll see we'll see everybody from the previous 3 books, because I have a really hard time saying goodbye to characters, so I never do. So we'll see everybody from there, but then also it'll be the stories between Zane, who is the last Lunar Council Enforcement Agency agent of the book, to kind of like get his mate. And then, okay, let me start over. In this world, there's something called the Sacred Pact, which is like something that happened 1,000 years ago that brought peace between the witches and the lunar wolves in this world. The lunar wolves are basically just like your regular earth wolves, that they started getting called lunar wolves ever since the new wolves came. Remember that. So in order to keep the Sacred Pact going and keep the peace, a select number of witches and werewolves have to mate, and that just has to continue. So all of these agents have to find witch mates to fulfill this Sacred Pact. And that's why a lot of the relationships are arranged. And so in this one, Zane, he comes from this just very affluent family, and his father's a bit of a, can I say? No, I don't think I can say that word. He's a bit of a jerk. He's a bit of a dick, okay? That's what his dad is. And he's sort of used these arranged relationships, Zane's entire life, to sort of wheel and deal and get things that he wants. So at this point, Zane is, 26 or 27, and he's gone through hundreds of arranged matings, and none of them have ever gone through. And he's just sort of given up hope that he'll ever actually have a mate. It's become a sort of like a joke in the town. And he just sort of pretends, he's all cocky and pretends it doesn't bother him. So in this book, he's meeting his next arranged mating, thinking the same thing's going to happen. And then he meets Tali, and Tali is sort of in a similar situation, only it hasn't been happening to him for quite as long. And Tali's first arranged mating went horribly wrong. So wrong that Tali has fought tooth and nail to get out of every single one since then. So putting these 2 people together who really don't want each other for, their own reasons. And then, then it turns out that they do, and a lot of other stuff happens. So yeah, that's Thrust. And then in Rosy Red Cheeks, it's, Cameron is a character you haven't met, but other people have met. That was awkward. In earlier books, and he's just kind of like a jerk, a delinquent, a punk, just a brat, right? And then he crashes his car in the forest during a snowstorm, and he's saved by this older bear shifter named Vic. And they have to stay in the same cabin together until the snow melts. And, it's just a lot of fun.
So you're saying they're going to hibernate together?
Oh, they're going to hibernate.
So I have to ask, because we know the question's going to come. You said that Thrust is going to be the 4th book in the series. Is that the final?
Oh, no. Thrust is the 4th book in the Lunar Wolves series. However, there's another series coming, which is the Solar Wolves, which is the other of the species. And so it's the last book in this series, but this series is just the first series in the universe. So everyone can strap in. We'll be here for a while.
All right. BL? So let me ask this question here as we're looking at playing with these universes and these characters. The big question that always comes up is that idea of what inspires these stories? What inspires these characters? So, Susan, how about you? What brought about and inspired? And because I know you and Chantal have been working with this rugby crowd for a while, but what inspired this series and what inspired the story?
So for this particular series, we knew we wanted to have. Okay, so the 3 books we have are a little different than what we originally planned. We originally planned to have 3 like super like full-on holiday romances, and that didn't quite happen. Basically, it's just ended up just being stories that had the holiday happen in them, but it was still fine. It worked out for these stories. We've got big plans for massive holiday things in the future. But these guys, we met them in the original Love and Rugby crew. And I was like, okay, we know they're going to get stories. But, and we were kind of thinking, okay, who's going to end up with who? How is this going to go? And I think we knew for Rocco, because he is this like island unto himself. He's very stubborn. He's an ex of one of the guys in the previous series. He's a really good guy. He really cares about people, but he's got a tough exterior. I'm like, okay, who would he go with? And I'm immediately like, it's got to be Wyatt. Like Chantal and I were just, Wyatt is just fun and just so everywhere. We thought it would be a really good, a lot of friction between them, because how is this going to work with this guy always flying off and the other guy whose life is so tied to the city and to this restaurant, and he basically hasn't taken a vacation in 5 years. And meanwhile, Wyatt's going to Italy and skiing in the Alps and doing all kinds of things. So for these guys, I don't know. I think we knew pretty early on we wanted them to have the Christmassy tie-in, but Wyatt also. It's because the stories overlap, so we see him and his plans for Halloween that don't go his way, but that might have been a little spoiler. But if you read Savor first, it'll be fine, and then read Seduce. But we had such a good time playing in this universe, and we were not ready to say goodbye. So we're staying in Philly, we're staying with the rugby team, and we introduce another character in this series that ties into the hockey series we're working on. That also takes place in Philly. So, and we did a book in that series a year or 2 ago for a charity anthology. So that book will be coming back and will be edited added a couple more chapters in, because we were under constraints for word count for the anthology. But I'm sorry, I don't know how to tell a story without telling 18 tangents off of that story. So.
That's called being a writer.
My gosh. Oh, it's that it's
plot A, plot B.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I don't know if I even answered the question, but we really love making the city. It's basically its own character in the book, and there's a rec league rugby team here that inspires me. Like I'll follow their Instagram posts and see the guys playing, because like hockey's my first love. Like rugby's fun to watch, but I'm only really got into it once we started doing the research for this series. So I still feel like I'm, learning the rules for it. So, but it's been fun adding that in. But
so Becke, how about you? What I know you talked about it a little bit as we started going in, but what inspired really wanting to create this story now, and kind of all the the journey that everybody goes on in the tale?
I think, well, the biggest inspiration came actually from a reader, and she asked me, and I have got a few, one other older couple, and she asked me for an older couple rather than for the younger couple. And I typically will write, my couples are typically in their 30s. And then I had a colleague that I worked with, and she had a very high-powered job and had some very bad things happen with her daughter. And she ended up raising this child, and the problems that she had trying to, you're going to go from a grandmother, which is a fabulous role, where you have all the fun things, you get to spoil them, and then you get to say, hi, honey, here's your kids, and leave. And so you get all the fun parts of it. And so I wanted to show that character going from that great role to suddenly having to mother that child. And so anyway, this particular person that I had seen do this inspired that, along with the reader who had requested that I do an older couple. And so that's basically where that story came from.
Kiki, how about you?
Yeah, so in this book, it was Zane's book, and I knew that just having written him for 3 books, he was very flirty, very cocky, just very playful, always there to sort of poke the wolf, as it were. So I knew he needed some comeuppance here. So I basically paired him with someone with a bigger reputation even than he had, because Tali comes from basically the most feared witch clan in the entire world. Like, they're a very small clan out of New York, but you know, if you sneeze at them wrong, you disappear and your whole family disappears. So pairing him up with this person who everybody is afraid of, who comes with this reputation, who is just as cocky on the outside as he was, it made it so that it was a lot of fun for him, sort of seeing the behavior that he used to display. Because in this book, you know, he's all grown up. He's not that little jerk he was in book 1. He's a grown man. He's ready to, you know, be a good guy. So yeah, it was basically just pairing him up kind of with a tiny version of himself, and just sort of realizing that the shell of a person, what a person shows on the outside, isn't usually ever what's going on inside, and that it takes sort of somebody to know your pain to see your pain. And I think that happens really well with these two. And then with Rosaria Cheeks, Cameron and Vic, basically it was just Cameron getting, you know, somebody who was gonna spank him into shape. Can I say spank? They spank. But you know, getting the man that he needs to become the man that he can be is why those people got put together.
What inspired your magical universe?
Which one? The Thrust one or the
Thrust one? Which I will remember the series name eventually.
I don't think I've said it very much. It's Lunar Wolves.
Lunar Wolves. I should remember that.
It's okay. When I started this, it was sort of a transition from what I was writing before. I've written just a bunch of sort of impreg Omegaverse romance books, and I wanted to transition into just straight, not straight, but into like gay paranormal romance, but with like no impreg. And so I knew that I wanted this like big world to sort of make up for, you know, applying these rules on me that weren't there before. And so it's really just a combination of all the things that I love, like things that I wanted to play around with. I knew that I wanted like the possibility for a lot of different magic types. So that's why, like, my witches, they all have different affinities. You can be like a alchemist, a healer. Oh God, I'm going to forget them, and I wrote the books. Anyway, there's a bunch of different types of witches, and each type of witch has a different sort of like way that power expresses. And so basically just creating a world that would open itself and lend itself to complete freedom on my part, because I just like to make a lot of stuff up. And so that is pretty much where this world came from.
BL?
So the whole series, it's kind of funny because my inspiration for the very first book in the series was, I can't remember if I saw it on That's Incredible or, you know, it's one of those
going
shows.
Back a few years.
Yeah, when I was a little kid, I saw about the Vineyard House over by Placerville in, you know, around Sacramento, and how the owner had gone mad from I can't remember if I think he had syphilis and went crazy. And so his wife, to keep him safe, chained him in the basement. And there was, and there were all these stories about how it was haunted and, you know, things that people had seen. Because the house has been there since, I think it was built like in 1840 or so, you know, it's pretty old. It was through the gold rush and all that. So that's kind of the basis of the whole series, was these two guys where the one guy has always he wants to prove that ghosts are real. He wants to see a real ghost and get proof of that. And his friend is just in love with him. So he goes along. He doesn't like it, but he goes along with it just to be with this other guy. So to me, it's kind of full circle that they do end up, finally married at the end, but at the beginning, they're not even together. So I like series like that where it's kind of a full circle story,
Leave it up to guys. It's just like, fine, you're going to drag me along for what? Yeah, I know.
Well, it's kind of funny because at the very first one, the guy, Jason, that does not like ghosts, his usual position is behind, or Wade is the one that doesn't like ghosts. His usual position is clinging onto the back of his shirt and just kind of
God, that would
following
be me.
behind him, like not looking around. And by the end, he's the one leading. So, he gets his day too.
Well, one of the favorite parts of being a writer, one of the favorite parts of, getting to build stories and build craft and build all these worlds fundamentally boils down to the things that you learn and the things that surprise you. Sometimes it's the things that a character does. You're like, oh, I guess that makes sense, but you're still a jackass. Other times it is you fall down a research rabbit hole. Sometimes it is, you go and you write something like, I don't know where that came from, but it really holds it holds the spirit of what I'm trying to work on. It holds the spirit of the book, the story. It has the hold and the impact. So is there something or a couple of somethings when you were working on these projects that, again, whether it was the rabbit hole you fell down or it was just something you discovered in a character that you said, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming. Something, or even something you discovered about yourself as a writer or personally that you just said, oh, okay, this is part of the process. So Becke, how about you?
I knew you'd have to ask me that. You made me be the first one for that. I was sitting there trying to think of the answer as you were asking the question. Something that I guess, one of the things I think that came out in the story and probably was a personal view, and I spoke about it before, was the multi-generational and how important I think it is for women to help women. And that was something that I wanted to show. And it was interesting for me because usually you have the older woman mentoring the younger one. And I tried to bring it around a little bit on the other way and make it so that the younger women were mentoring this older one in this aspect. So what I like to do is typically try to reverse it. And it even happened with the main character being afraid of horses. I mean, I'm a trainer. I've trained horses all my life. And so I'm always shocked when somebody says they're frightened of them. So to me, it's interesting to put yourself on the other side of that and say, okay, how does it feel for someone to fear it? And so I have to think about that in a whole different perspective. So that's something that I have learned and that I typically try to do in the writing. And I think gives me a broader perspective too.
Kiki, how about you?
I think one of the things that I sort of fell into was when researching. It was sort of ongoing research because I mean this is book 4, so I had already established a lot of the world, but with my witches, and I didn't remember, I looked it up, but they're telepaths, familiars, diviners, kinetics, healers, and alchemists, and so each of those are sort of like a category of a type of magic, but then sort of exploring ways that can express itself, just ways that has already existed, or like when you think of like a telepath, like different ways that you could show that in a person, because everyone can't just like hear your thoughts, because that would be boring. So just sort of diving into like different cultures' views in magic and different sort of like I'm saying like a lot, ideals that people like wouldn't be cool if, like the ways that changes from person to person. That was a lot of fun for me to come up with, because then I was able to always just come up with a person who has like a variation of this ability, and it's always fluid and it's always changing, and that's really exciting for me. But then also in this book, specifically in Thrust, I based Tali's tribe, or not tribe, his clan, off of the Lenape tribe that used to live in like the area that's considered New York right now. But I mean, the awful stuff happened and pushed out and all of this stuff. So it was sort of like a fun way to sort of like what if the Native Americans were actually, these super powerful witches, what would have happened then? And then so like they still have control of this area. They've always had control of this area. And I mean, I didn't base it like exactly off of, but there's a lot of influence like with the names and just the culture of this specific witch clan, where the women are the leaders and the women stay in the area and the men are the ones who go off to live with their partners and things like that. So it was just a lot of fun exploring that and then connecting it to my world and my character.
Yel, how about you? What was it that caught you on this one?
Well, this one, there's not, so I just had to make up like a ghost story because they go to this party and they're on a riverboat. So I tried to find some kind of something that had happened, because there's always been riverboats down, in Sacramento, but I couldn't really find much about that I could use for a ghost story. But I honestly, a lot of my inspiration for ghost stories comes from, I watch a lot of real videos, like, where people catch stuff. And some of it is so freaking creepy. And even if it's fake, it's kind of instilled it in me that I really don't want to experience any of this in real life, like at all. But I love writing about it, and I just find it so fascinating that these things can happen, and there might be an explanation, there may not be, but I love that aspect of it, and I love that there's so many different things that can happen, different types of spirits. I use a lot of the guys that are in my books use a lot of protections. So this psychic they go to tells them, you need to use this stone to protect for this. So it was kind of interesting to me studying more about that, because I really didn't know anything about that. And then it's kind of funny that you talked about the Native Americans, because in my first one, the part of the reason all this happens was because when they first moved there, they had a vineyard, but they couldn't grow anything because it was too rocky. They did not come from there, so they didn't know how to farm there. So they actually had the indigenous people help them, because they knew how to grow there, so they helped them. Well, they had promised them, you'll get this much land for helping me. You can still keep this part, but they didn't do that. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what starts this whole thing rolling with this house being cursed and all that. So, but it's really fun to me to go back and look at historical moments or, things that have really happened and take a creative bend to that, well, what if this happened?
Susan, how about you?
So one thing different for us with doing this book is, as Chantal and I were talking about the characters and, figuring out who they really were, it became very apparent to us that Wyatt, for being 25, is so self-assured and just he knows what he wants. He doesn't question it. He just goes after it. And Rocco, being 38, you figure the older guy should be more secure in himself, and he's not. And I know that that's everything that happens is based upon, your life experiences, the interactions you have with people, the relationships you have with people. And that really plays into him becoming aware of that. That kind of surprised us early on, that Wyatt was just so sure of himself and what he wanted, and nothing was going to like derail him from that. So it was kind of nice to have somebody so confident. And then with the research, just what it's really like to be a chef in a restaurant and own that restaurant. So I'm like, well, I'll help with the research, and yeah, we'll read things, but I'm also like, oh, I get to watch like the Restaurant Rescue and the TV shows of this, like Gordon Ramsay and, like whatever, and movies about chefs, which, but and then also like, what goes into like developing an app. And then also Wyatt and then Penn, his best friend, who's in the previous book in this series, play chess together a lot. And I did not know how to play chess before these books. So like, okay, well, I'm teaching myself to play chess now. I'm buying a chessboard because like I need to immerse myself in this. So it's this, I went probably a little further down that rabbit hole than I maybe needed to. But I don't know, it was fun. I love every new book that either we do together, I do on my own. I love going into what the character's job is going to be. I'm like, oh, I'm so curious about, what's it like to be a zookeeper? Oh, what's it like to do this and that? I love that part so much. So that was fun.
Well, it sounds like we've got a lot of stuff to stack up everybody's to-be-read piles. But before we get out of here, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you. And, of course, find the books. So website, social media, and, of course, where they can get the books. So, Kiki, you are up first.
Sure. It's pretty easy to find me online if you just type Kiki Burrelli. I usually come up on Facebook at Kiki Burrelli. I have a Facebook group called Kiki's Den that you can come and hang out and have fun in. Instagram, at Kiki Burrelli. Website, kikiburrelli.com. And then you can find the books on Amazon. Both of them are on Amazon, and then also Kindle Unlimited. Thrust is also in paperback, but Rosie Red Cheeks isn't in paperback yet. So you can get it both ways if you want. And I think that's all of them.
BL?
You can find all my books are on Amazon, and they're all in Kindle Unlimited. Most are in paperback. Some are not yet. You can find me at blmaxwellwriter.com. And I'm also on Facebook under BL Maxwell, Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I don't do many TikTok videos, but I am there. So I'm easy to find.
Susan?
So at most places, I'm at Susan Scott Shelley, except Twitter, because there's not enough spaces for my long name. You can find all of my links and everything at susanscottshelley.com, and also at shelleyandmare.com, because Chantal and I thought, why not have a website for our co-writing adventures? And you can find our books on Amazon, Apple, Books Kobo, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, Smashwords, and at your local library if you would like to read them there.
And Becke?
I'm at BeckeTurner.com, and I spell my name with a BECKE Turner.com. I have a private Facebook group. It's Becky's Bookmates. And you can also find me on Facebook under Becke Turner. My books are available on Amazon in print and in digital.
And I'm Jim Nettles. I've had the pleasure of being your host tonight. You can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentials.net, authoressentialsworkshops.com, the speculative-fiction-academy.com, creatingprose.com, and of course here at ConTinual. And we will see everybody soon. Go load up those to-be-read piles. We'll see everybody next time.